Hello everyone and welcome to Merlin's Manor. Today I'm going over my wife and I's top 10 two-player games. These are games that are either two-player only or are just good at the two-player count that we enjoy playing that way. Now my list, I primarily decided to try and focus on games that were at least as good at two-player, if not better at two-player than other player counts. My wife mainly picked out games that she just enjoys playing two-player with me, and so we're going to be going over these two lists. And so let's just go ahead and get right on into the number 10 game. And that number 10 game for my wife is Patchwork. Patchwork is a game where you are getting these different buttons that represent your income. You're going around this track and you got this rondelle system where you are picking up these different shapes and you are putting them onto your board, trying to fill up as much space as you can on that board, as well as getting those buttons to be able to score points, as well as to use them as currency earlier in the game. There's also an extra bonus for if you are the first one to fill in a 7x7 space, and so there's a bit of a race there. And there's a nice little push and pull as far as how you get things in the game, is you have to go up a certain amount and based on the tile, and if you don't go past the other person, you get to go again. And so that's kind of a neat little factor there as well. And so it's a two-player only game that we really enjoy. It's my wife's number 10. My number 10 is Zombicide Black Plague. Now, this is a game that the ideal player counts for this game are 2, 3, or 6. The reason being for that is you are always going to have 6 characters in the game. If you're playing at 2 players, each person gets 3 characters. If you're playing at 3 players, each person gets 2. If you're playing at 6 players, each person controls 1. If you're at 4 or 5 player count, it's going to be a bit awkward there. And so one of the great player counts to play this game at is that 2-player count, because you are getting to control half of those characters. And what you're doing in this game is you're going around trying to fulfill an objective. And while you're at it, these zombies are coming at you. You're going to have to take care of them by rolling dice, hoping that you hit certain numbers in order to take them out. And you're going to try and be very tactical, because if you get hit 3 times, you're out. And most scenarios, if one person goes out, you lose the scenario. And there's very few ways that you can heal back up in the game. And so you're trying to stay away from them when it becomes the zombies' turn so they don't attack you and get you, while still trying to manage the amount that are on the board and solve your objective. Now for our number 9 games. At number 9, my wife has chosen Paris, La Cité de la Lumière. Now this is a 2-player only game, and it's made up of 2 stages. In the first stage, you are laying down these cobblestone tracks that have different colors on them. One of those colors is going to be your color. Another color is going to be your opponent's color, and then there's a neutral color. You can only lay tiles on the next stage down where it's your color or the neutral color, and so you're trying to put them in a certain way so that you can best be able to lay down buildings next round. And the other action you can take during that round is to draft a building. There's going to be these buildings that are Tetris shapes that you're going to choose to put in your reserve. And you're going to have to be able to put those down in the next round. So you have a combination of laying those tracks as well as trying to get buildings that will fit in certain places. And you're trying to figure out how to lay those so that you can put those buildings in. But you don't know what your opponent's going to do when it comes to the actual laying down of pieces. And so you have to be very tactical about that. And then the second round comes along and you are then placing those buildings, or you're taking some special actions. And there's several actions that you can take, and there's different ones that can be added in and changed out. And so there's a little bit of replayability there. If you aren't able to place any buildings, those are actually going to be negative points at the end of the game. So you have to be very careful about the buildings you choose to take and make sure you can kind of get those down. And you get points by having buildings next to city lights. You're going to have a multiplication thing going on there for how big your buildings are next to those city lights. And so if you have like multiple city lights that are next to you, you're going to be multiplying it by that number. And so there's a lot of things to keep track of in the game. It's a great game. Number 9 for me is Codenames Duet. And this is a game where you have these different words in front of you, and there's certain ones you're trying to get your partner to guess. But you can only say one word and a number, and that number represents how many of those different words that are in that grid relate to the word that you're saying. And you can't just go with one each time, because you don't have time for that. And so you might have to try and figure out how you can connect 2 or 3 or maybe even 4 different things at once with one word. But you also have to be careful that they don't guess something that's wrong. Now, if they guess something that's just a normal wrong kind of answer, then their turn ends and they take a token. But if they guess one of 3 things that they're not allowed to guess, then the game is over, you lose. And so you have to be very careful about that. And so it's a game where you kind of have to be in your partner's head, know how they think. They have to kind of know how you think, and to be able to make those matches together in some very unique ways. Coming in at number 8, my wife has also chosen Zombicide Black Plague as our first crossover here. And so I've already mentioned about that, so we can move straight on into my number 8, which is Patchwork, another crossover. And so here we go. Zombicide Black Plague and Patchwork are our number 8 games. Jumping on into number 7 now. My wife has chosen Welcome To. Both Welcome To the original and Welcome to the Moon. She loves both of these games, as do I. They are roll and write games, and you basically, Welcome to Your Perfect Home, you are building out these streets by getting numbers and putting them along in rows in ascending order, and you're trying to get all kinds of different bonuses in various different ways. It's a very point salad-y type game. And Welcome to the Moon is very similar, except for you're going through a campaign, and you are basically leaving Earth in the first one, and then you're going in through space, and then you're settling on the moon, and then you have to leave the moon, and then you are settling on this other planet, and then there's something goes wrong there, and so you're leaving that planet, and there's mining on one of them. So there's all these different maps that you're going through that go tell this story. And we really enjoyed this game because of that campaign feature there. It's very interesting to be going through all these different maps, and each one offers a different challenge. And after you go through the campaign once, it goes right into another campaign, and as something happens, you have to leave again. And so you just kind of keep going through that a few times. Then you can just replay again and go take different tracks, because there's a little bit of a choose your own adventure as you go as well. It gives you different tracks, and so you can go a completely different route and get different bonuses and different things like that. So that's my wife's number 7, Welcome To, and Welcome to the Moon. My number 7 is Paris, La Cité de la Lumière. Again, we've already gone over this one. It's a crossover, and so that's all I'm going to say about that. Is my number 7. I enjoy it very much as well. Number 6 for my wife is Legendary Encounters Firefly. Now, this is a deck building game that is cooperative, so you're working together to go through basically the TV series, all the different episodes of the TV series, and you're doing three of them at one time. You go from one into the next and into the next, and you have to try and beat all of those. And they get a little bit harder each time because you're getting more cards set up that are out already in the river there for the bad guys. And so you have the issue of they get into this one area, then they start attacking you, and you have to kind of mitigate the bad guys being in there while you're also trying to solve whatever the objective is for that round. And just like any good deck builder, you are using your cards to buy better cards, and you're trying to cull some of your starter cards out as you get those better cards. But the neat thing about this is you are actually holding over your deck from one episode to another as you go through the 3 episodes. And so your deck is getting stronger for each of those episodes. And then you reset for any future games. You can do it campaign style, or you can do it one-off series of 3 episodes. And so it's a great deck building game. It's best at 2 players because of the fact that it's already hard at 2 players, but it gets harder the more players you have because it takes you longer to build your deck. But after each player, the bad guys get a turn, and so you're going to have that problem of it's taking you longer to build up your strong deck to be able to take them out. And so I really prefer this game at the 2-player count. I think it's hard enough at 2 players. You get to 3 players, it's very hard, and I've never played it at 4 players, but I can imagine it would be near impossible. Not impossible, but near impossible. And so I really like it at the 2-player count. It seems to be that right match of difficulty there. My number 6 is Atlantis Rising. And the reason that Atlantis Rising makes my list here for 2-player games, it's a multiplayer game, but the thing that's really nice about that, the 2-player mode, is it adds in this extra kind of way that it's played. In a normal multiplayer game, you each get one faction, and you have an ability that you're able to use each round, and that's all you get. But in the 2-player mode, you actually switch off using a 3rd faction. And that 3rd faction is you select these 2 factions at random, and you choose which one you want to use that round, and the other one gets put into the discard. And then the next round, you'll do the same thing. And so you're getting to use all these different factions throughout the game, and each round you get to choose one of 2 that you want to use. And so you look at that and say, well, that sounds like it would be good for us in this moment. And so you get to use that one there. And what you're doing at Atlantis Rising is you are trying to escape before the city floods by building up these different inventions to eventually build up this main game ending invention, the one that allows you to escape there before the island floods. And each round you're going to have flood tiles coming out just about, or each round you're going to flood, and then you also have other things that are going to tell you to flood certain areas, and so you've also got this risk because you're putting out workers. It's a worker placement game, and you can decide, well, the best options are near the edge of the board, but those are also the ones that are most likely to flood, and so you have to kind of balance there. And of course, some of the powers are nice because they allow you to still do something if it gets flooded, and it's just really kind of neat, all the different asymmetric powers that you can play as. And I really love that 2-player because you get to play with so many different powers throughout the game. I think that's really neat. So number 5 now, my wife has chosen Parks. Parks is a game that we both enjoy very much. It can be played all the way up to all the way up to 5 players, and in this game, it plays best, I think, at 2 and 4 players. And the reason for that is it gets a little bit. You got this track that you're going along. And at 3 players, it gets a little crowded. At 4 players, you add in an extra tile there that helps with the crowding a little bit. And then 5 players, it gets super crowded trying to play because you can't go somewhere where somebody is unless you extinguish your fire. But you only get that fire one time along the track until one of your people gets to the end. Then you get to flip it and you get one more opportunity that round to be able to go where somebody else is. And so at the 2-player count, I think there's a lot of leeway of where you can go because there's only going to be 4 hikers on the board as opposed to having more at the higher player counts. And so I think it works really well at 2 players. We really enjoy playing. It's a resource management game where you are trying to get resources to visit different parks. And we have the Nightfall expansion, which just makes the game a lot better because you've got so much more actions that you can do. It also adds more year cards, which are bonus cards, and better year cards that have better opportunities for scoring points, for bonus points there. And so we really enjoy the game, especially with the Nightfall expansion. We haven't played the Wildlife expansion yet, but we're looking forward to getting to that soon as well. And so my wife's number 5 was Parks. My number 5 is another crossover, Welcome to the Moon. I really enjoy this game and all it has to offer. And I've already mentioned that, so we can move right on in to our number 4 games. And my wife's number 4 game is Meadow. Meadow is a game that has a lot of beautiful artwork on it, and you're getting these cards that have symbols on them, and you have certain symbols that you have to get into your tableau in order to be able to play those cards, because they have a requirement of certain symbols. And when you get that new card, you have to put it over one of the symbols that it required, and so you'll no longer be able to use that symbol unless it's one of the ones that's at the bottom of your tableau, that's the different land areas. But all the rest, you're covering something up. And so you're trying to figure out, what do you want to cover up? What do you want to leave open to be able to get other cards, to be able to make combos of getting all these different cards out. Meanwhile, you're also trying to score bonus points for being the first person to have 2 types of symbols that are next to each other on this little board over here, that if you get those first, you can go ahead and claim that for 2 points. And the next one you claim for 3 and then 4 points. And so you've got that kind of race over there to get those symbols. And so it's a very fun game. You're trying to get lots of combos going together in order to get as many high point cards played as you can, as well as getting those bonuses. My number 4 is another crossover. It's Legendary Encounters Firefly. Really enjoy that game. Moving on to our number 3 games. My wife's number 3 game is Doctor Who, Time of the Daleks. We're big Doctor Who fans, and this is a game that's very interesting. It basically takes all these different kind of scenarios that the Doctor has had to face, and they're in these different locations that you can go. You go to those locations and you flip a card that's also something that happened, and you combine those 2 things, and you have to get different symbols on dice, and you're recruiting different companions that will give you extra dice, will give you the ability to change dice or to re-roll dice. And you're trying to be able to then get this dice pool built up that you can then roll, and hope that you can get all these different symbols between what you roll in your first roll and how you're able to mitigate those dice rolls with your companion's abilities and your doctor's abilities. And so it's a very fun game if you like good dice roller games that have that kind of matching symbols type feature to it. I highly recommend it. You're trying to beat the Daleks to Gallifrey, and it's semi-cooperative in a way. We play a little bit more cooperatively in mindset. Basically, to win the game, somebody has to get to Gallifrey before the Daleks. But whoever gets to Gallifrey first as a doctor, they actually get credit for being the doctor that saved the day. And so that's where that semi-cooperative nature comes in, because there's a little, you want to be the one that makes it there and wins. And some people play that a little bit more cutthroat, to the where it's like they're mainly focused on being the first one. We kind of play that we want to make sure that we get there before the Daleks, but at the same time, we kind of, if we see the opportunity to get there, we'll go ahead and try and get there ahead of the other one. But we don't make it a big deal of, hey, I won the game. We're happy that we've both just won the game. And so that's how we kind of play that Doctor Who Time of the Daleks. And so that's my wife's number 3 two-player game. My number 3 two-player game is Spirit Island. And this is another one it's multiplayer. It goes all the way up to 4 or 5. Actually, I think 6 with the expansions, but that'd be just crazy. This is one of those games that plays better at lower player counts because it's got so much going on, even at 2 players. You add more boards, and you add more of the people that are trying to take over the land. And what's nice about it, though, with 2 or more is that you are able to kind of work together with your spirits and have some combos that kind of combo off one another. But the more players you get, not only do you have more people to take care of, more board space to worry about, but you're also trying to figure out how you can work together and combo and it gets more and more complex the more players that you have. This is a game that I think works great as a solo game, and it works great at 2 players. At 3 players, it's still good. I'm not sure I'd want to go in for a 4-player game unless all 4 people just really know the game and know what they're doing and can really kind of focus in there. But one of my favorite games to play at 2-player count is the Spirit Island game. Coming in at number 2, my wife has chosen Isle of Cats, and this is another one of our favorite games. It's a game that oftentimes we would play the family mode with the kids, and then we go ahead and play a 2-player game, just the adults, with the normal mode. And basically what you're doing in this game is you are getting these little polyomino tiles that are cats that you are trying to rescue from an island. You're putting them onto your boat, trying to make sure they fit in there. If you put a new cat on, it has to be adjacent to something else you've already built. Same with treasures that you put on your boat that can fill up spaces and give you points as well. If you get those rare treasures, or if they kind of work with some bonus cards as well, that would be a good reason to get those treasures on your boat. And you're trying to fill up as much as you can because you lose points for any unfilled rooms. And there's going to be at least 1 or 2 rooms that you're not able to fill, maybe more. Especially if you're going after points for your lesson cards and getting more lesson cards in the non-family mode. You got a lot more things to be concerned with in the regular standard mode, because you are drafting cards each round, and you have resources that you have to allocate, and you have to be careful you have enough resources as you're buying cards for resources, but you also need those resources to lure the cats onto the boat, and you need baskets in order to get them onto the boat as well. And so you're having to keep track of a lot of different things in the standard mode. Family mode, you're just picking a polyomino tile and putting it onto your board, taking turns doing that each round until either you don't want to put any on or you've run out of cats. And then at the end of the game, you're scoring points for a couple bonus cards that you had, as well as for your cat families in that family mode. It's fairly simple, but the standard mode really opens things up. We play that standard mode as a couple here. We really enjoy it. And of course, it plays great at all player counts. We've enjoyed playing it at 4 players, at 3 players. And so it's a great game, but also works great at 2 players as well. My second favorite 2-player game, or at least a game at the 2-player count, is 7 Wonders Duel. And this is a 2-player only game. And it's a game where you are trying to get the most points by drafting these different cards that are going to give you resources to be able to pay for other cards in the future. You've got these cards that just give you straight points. You have cards that give you military, and you got this military tug and pull. If you can get points at the end of the game, if you've gotten more on your military than the other person, can give you points. And you can actually even win the game if you get your military all the way down the line. So the other person has to keep an eye on that, even if they're not going very hard on the military themselves. Make sure you don't get all the way to the end and get the auto win when maybe they had a lot more points. You had a lot more points than them, but then that happens, and so you need to be careful about that. There is a science way of winning as well if you get a certain amount of different science icons, and so there's some instant win ways that you kind of have to be mindful of while you're also trying to score the most points. And there's also that ability, if you know you're not scoring enough points, you can go after one of those ways to win the game. And so it's a very interesting game. It's got a lot going on in such a small, quick, easy to play game. Well, I say easy to play. It takes a little bit to learn the strategies of the game, but it's not that hard to learn and get to the table. And so I really enjoy Seven Wonders Duel. It's my favorite two-player only game. And let's go into now the number one games for my wife and I. My wife's number one game here is Gloomhaven, and that includes Jaws of the Lion as well as the Sticking Into Gloomhaven. This is one that could easily have made my list, but I used kind of a different criteria here. It is one of my number one games for overall. It plays great at 2 players, but also plays great at 3 and 4 players. I think having more characters is stronger personally, and so that's why I didn't go ahead and put this on the list. But we play it 2 players with 2 characters each, and so we do play the full 4 characters, and so it's a great choice for a 2-player count game as well. And so that's that's why my wife put this on the list. It's a game that we have played almost all the way through the Gloomhaven main campaign. We played through Jaws of the Lion twice. The times we went through Jaws of the Lion, we actually played with 1 character apiece. We played with 2 of the 4 characters, and we switched and played with the other 2. And now we're almost done with our Gloomhaven campaign, and we're looking to get into Frosthaven. And it's basically a dungeon crawler game where you have all these different scenarios you're going through, and you are battling different monsters. And most of them, it's trying to kill all the monsters, but some of them have different goals as well that you're going through trying to do. And you are playing a couple cards on your turn. One you're going to use for the top action, one you're going to use for the bottom action. And you're having to fight off these monsters while you explore the whole kind of map area that you're in and complete whatever the objective is. Very fun game. Has so many different classes that you can unlock that do different things. It's a lot to explore, and we've really enjoyed it. It's got a lot of replayability because you've got about 100 scenarios just in the base game. And we've had a lot of fun with it. Looking forward to Frosthaven. Looking forward to Crimson Scales, the fan-made game. It's one of my number one games overall, and it's my wife's number one game at the 2-player count. My number one game at the 2-player count is Wingspan, and this is also one of those games that's one of my top games overall as well. Wingspan is a game that I have enjoyed for a long time. We've got all the expansions, and the most recent expansion is the Asia expansion, which actually gives you a specific 2-player mode, which is a very interesting mode to play. It adds a different way of end-of-round goals where when you're playing birds, you are putting tokens on this board, and then you're trying to make those tokens be in a certain way that will match with whatever the end round goal is. And you're also trying to overall have your tokens near one another, because the largest contiguous group of your tokens at the end of the game is going to score you points. And so it's a very interesting 2-player only version there with that dual board. Now the Asia expansion itself isn't just a 2-player mode. It has that 2-player mode, but it also has the ability to increase your game to 6 or 7 players, as well as just adding it in for any kind of regular player counts. And so it's not just 2 players, but I really enjoy the 2-player mode there, as well as just playing the base Wingspan at 2 players is great as well. So these are our top 10 games, my wife and I. We've had a decent amount of crossover along the way, because we play a lot of these 2-player games together and enjoy a lot of the same kind of games. And I want to know, what are your favorite 2-player games? Go ahead and leave some of those in the comments below. I'd love to hear from you. Now, if you would like to check out some more of my videos, I have my top 10 welcoming games right here that you can go ahead and click on that. Check that out. Lots of games that are good for people who are new. And here you can go check out my top 10 anticipated games for 2023, the games that I'm looking forward to playing. As always, I hope you enjoyed this video, and I'll catch you in the next one.